you. Considering that our audience is mostly made up of students, I'd like to start off by asking you all, how did you get your start in fashion? And I guess we'll start with Marie and work our way down.
My start really happened from a very young age. Probably like most of you, I had a great love, really just not for fashion, but for the whole model empire. And I always knew I wanted to work for a magazine, and I was very fortunate to receive a scholarship to attend the Laboratory Institute of Merchandising, LIM. And in the first few weeks there, I went and auditioned, really, for an internship. They gave only one internship at a magazine. And I went to Harper's Bazaar, and I went to 17, and I chose 17 over Harper's Bazaar. I was very young, and 17 seemed like a right fit. So I started at 17. During my internship, they offered me a position at 17, so I left school after my freshman year, happily. School was a great experience, but I was ready to go. I was hired in the merchandising department, and AKA a traveler. I did fashion shows and television appearances in 48 cities, all for $12,500 a year. We were talking about salaries before. Happily, I said I would have vacuumed, the offices before I left at the end of the day. And after 3 years at 17, I again was very fortunate. A friend from 17 went to Promo Steel, which is a trend forecasting company in Paris. She went to open the London office, and she referred me to Paris to run the New York office. And I was 23 or 24 or something. And I started living on the West Coast 1 week a month, developing both of those markets. I was responsible for new business development as well as consulting with that client base that went everywhere from, I have Promo Steel people here, it's quite a list. It goes from Estee Lauder to Maybelline to Barbie to name anyone who makes a consumer product. And so it led me to live on the West Coast. Shortly after I was there, I started a business with a partner named Popeye. And Popeye was the first company of its kind to document pop culture on video for Fortune 500 corporations. So basically, my partner was the one who filmed. She was formerly the Senior Vice President of Licensing at OP. And so Susie was in the trenches, raves and coffee houses and all these things that were happening. And I was the talking head back to the Senior Vice President of Coke and Pepsi and Warner Brothers and Sony and Honda and the Republican Party and name it, we had them. Again, a much higher level of client base, a much broader level of client base. So after several years of doing that, I moved back, and so I even saw somebody here from Vibe Style. I went to Namsby, and Namsby at the time was really men's polyester pants with elastic waists. And they came and said, we're having a problem with business. Well, it kind of was self-explanatory. So we went to Vibe and created Vibe Style, and hip-hop had really never, it was like, who is hip-hop, what is hip-hop? And we went to Javits with Vibe, and we put sports, music, and fashion under one roof. And I decided, I was always on the other side, I was on television instead of getting television, and I said, why don't we have television come and cover? They're curious about hip-hop. And in the camera crews started to come, and I got the nickname, the TV lady. So they just, oh, you know that TV lady, you know that TV girl, the blonde girl. And so it led to someone saying to me, something called Fashion Week is starting. Do you want to work with us? Well, good choice. That was a long answer to how it started. This is where it got.
Very interesting answer.
So it was fun.
Well, I have a very different background. I started out with my education and my experience in finance. And I worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers for 9.5 years. So I wore a suit, and I actually had a lot shorter hair, and I looked very normal. I looked like everyone else in the corporate world. Long story short, a client came along. He said, Felix, I love your clothing, which I kind of accrued from all my travels around the world. And I was wearing McQueen and stuff. I was ahead of my time. I had all this money to burn. I didn't know what to do with it. I bought clothes. So he asked me to borrow some of my stuff for a photo shoot. And I said, sure, I'll lend you, but I'll bring it. Because I said, well, I love you and I trust you. I want to make sure I get my clothing back in one piece. And I get it back. So I go to the photo shoot, didn't know the photographer. I come in with garment bags and all the stuff that I thought he would love that was right for his music, for his style of artist. I brought it in there, I set it up, and to my luck, the stylist that was hired partied the night before, got drunk, or actually just partied a little too much, and sent his assistant who had never styled a shoot before. And it was quite obvious. So here I am looking, and I'm trying to offer suggestions, trying to be polite, because in this business you have to be polite, and you have to know when not to overstep your line, because you can burn a bridge really quickly. So I was offering some suggestions because this girl just did not know what she was doing. And I kind of, in my head, thought I knew what I was doing. And so the photographer thought I was a stylist. So he asked her to sit down and let me do my job. So this is my friend. I took over, rocked him out. Long story short, he booked me for a shoot. I said, I am not a stylist. And he said, yeah, you are. He thought I was joking. He said, this is what I'm doing next Tuesday. It was for W Magazine. It was very exciting. I was like, who gets W? I'm not even a stylist. So I called all my friends in the business. I had some friends in fashion. I pulled from stores like Grossman's in Greenwich and you know, from jewelers, from my friends at Fair Late, and they just kind of said, finally, Felix, this is what you're supposed to be doing.
Wonderful.
So I showed up to the shoot with almost $1 million worth of furs and jewelry and vintage Chanel, and I was like, what do I, and it was like a kid in a candy store, and I was diabetic. And so then I styled this shoot, rocked it out. He booked me for another one, and of course it was the adrenaline rush of doing something that I had no idea, flying by the seat of my pants, but I loved it. And it started out as a hobby, and I did a shoot here, was in the horse stables in Greenwich, and was in the great loft in Manhattan, and then, you know, one thing led to another. I got a job in television, got my first private client, took over a bigger role working with the staff worldwide, and all along I was like, what am I doing? This is like a lot of fun. I'm getting paid for this. People love it. I'm loving it. And it just kind of kept escalating. And then finally one day I had an epiphany. I said, well, I was sitting under the dryer getting my hair done, and I looked over at my hairstylist, and I said, if I open an office in the city, will you come along and work with me? Because all my clients are already coming to him. And I said, I'm thinking about starting this hybrid business, and it's going to be hair and wardrobe under one roof. And I'm working in television, I'm covering Fashion Week for Fox, I'm doing stuff for NYC TV on NBC, and doing stuff for CBS and ABC, and it's just all coming together. And I took the leap of faith. I said, if I've gone from working for PricewaterhouseCoopers, legacy Pricewaterhouse, to then Bloomberg Television, I can do this. I can start my own business. And I started my own business. It took me a year to find the place that I wanted. A year and a half ago, this June, I opened, and it's been a success. It's now hair and makeup and wardrobe under one roof. It's a one-stop shop, which there was this big void in the business. Me from not having a life and from traveling, you know, East Coast, West Coast, and around the world, running around for my clients, trying to fit their schedule because they are on television or they're doing a TV show or I was going to be a part of it. You know, I said, I need to open up a place where they can come to me and I can actually make dinner plans with my friends. Instead of me carding my team and calling them and saying, where are you, what are you doing? You can come to me and we're all going to be here together. And when you show up, it's all going to be laid out. And I have a wonderful assistant who actually makes the phone calls, gets me the clothes that I need and want, and the stuff is sitting there, jewelry, dresses, shoes, accessories. It's a woman's dream. Naturally, you have some fabulous shoes on, by the way. You know, and it's just grown into this business, and it's just been a dream come true. So for me, what started out on business and went into, I kind of tried to figure out how we could get into television, had no TV experience, had to kind of create my own path, and then knew when to get out of the driver's seat and into the passenger seat, and just kind of like let my career take me in the direction
Followed your
it is.
passion.
And finally, this is where I am with these wonderful people.
Wonderful.
Hair, makeup, and wardrobe.
We were talking before, and it seems like the people that you start out with in this business are the people that stay with you,
Yeah,
the good people.
Yeah.
So who you know now,
very important.
don't do anything, don't do them wrong, because they're going to be with
Don't
you
sleep
later
with
on.
them. I'll ad lib.
Robert.
Okay. Susie, how about you?
I started off as, when I was in college, I went to Simmons College with Liz, who works at LIM.
Russell Simmons has a college, or Kimora Lee?
Both of them. No, it was a women's college. And my mom picked it out for me because I really didn't want to go to college because I wanted to be a fashion designer, and I actually did summer programs here at Parsons. And so I said I would do it if I could take my junior year and go to Paris. And so she said, done. So I went to Paris, and I worked for a black designer named Patrick Kelly. And he was very famous. He was absolutely amazing. But he had these little good luck charms called black baby dolls that had like black baby doll, and then I'd have to glue gun the pin on the back. So after a month of being in Paris, just glue gunning back black baby dolls, I'm like, Patrick, can I do something more? And he said, you want to do something more, Miss Susie? Then you are going to be my assistant. So I was so lucky that I asked him for that, because then I ended up being his assistant. And when my school started, he asked me to stay on. Of course, I was free, so it was free labor. And I ended up working for him for free for a year. And he wanted me to stay on, and my mom said, you know, Susie, you can't work for free for the rest of your life. Come back, graduate from college, which I did. And then I met this guy, and we went out for dinner. He was a friend of my friend. And everybody was coming up to him saying, I have the perfect assistant for you. And I said, what do you do? I'm about to graduate. He said, oh, I'm the director of publicity for Giorgio Armani. His name was Hamilton South. And I said, I am looking for a job. I would love to work for you. And he said, well, you're going to have to interview. And I went for interviews, and he never called me back. And I kept calling him and saying, you know, I really want to come. I was at Boston at the time. And he said, okay, come to New York, you're hired. They moved me to New York. I ended up working for Giorgio Armani. I dressed celebrities there, and I dealt with all of their publicity. And after a year, he left. And he said, you know, Susie, there's a private call for you on line 1. So I picked up the phone, and I hear this voice, I hear you want to see me. And I said, yes, I do want to see you. Be here tomorrow morning at 10. Hang on. Turns out to be it was Candy Pratt's Price from Vogue magazine. And so Hamilton dressed me up in a really short skirt, really high heels. I'd never worn heels in my entire life, nor had I worn a skirt before. And he told me exactly what to say, and I went in to interview with Anna Wintour, and I had actually memorized all of I used to do these editorial reports where you would look at what people were wearing. And so when I interviewed with Anna, she asked me who my favorite designers were, and I looked at her and I said, you know, Christian Lacroix, Manolo Blahnik, Chanel, and I literally could tell every single thing that she was wearing, and I was hired to work for Candy, and that's where I started.
Good story.
Wow. I slept my way to the middle.
And I always knew I wanted to work for a magazine, and I was very fortunate to receive a scholarship to attend the Laboratory Institute of Merchandising, LAM. And in the first few weeks there, I went and auditioned, really, for an internship. They gave only one internship at a magazine. And I went to Harper's Bazaar, and I went to 17, and I...
Thank you. Considering that our audience is mostly made up of students, I'd like to start off by asking you all, how did you get your start in fashion? And I guess we'll start with Marie and work our way down.
My start really happened from a very young age. Probably like most of you, I had a great love, really just not for fashion, but for the whole model empire. And I did fashion shows and television appearances in 48 cities, all for $12,500 a year. We were talking about salaries before. Happily, I said I would have vacuumed, you know, the offices before I left at the end of the day. And after 3 years at 17, I again was very fortunate. A friend from 17 went to Promo Steel, which is a trend forecasting company in Paris. She went to open. I chose 17 over Harper's Bazaar. I was very young, and 17 seemed like a right fit. So I started at 17. During my internship, they offered me a position at 17, so I left school after my freshman year, happily. School was a great experience, but I was ready to go. I was hired in the merchandising department, and AKA a traveler, in the London office, and she referred me to Paris to run the New York office. And I was 23 or 24 or something. And I started living on the West Coast 1 week a month, developing both of those markets. I was responsible for new business development as well as consulting with that client base that went everywhere from, I have Promo Steel people here, it's quite a list. It goes from Estee Lauder to Maybelline